Thank you, Rebecca, and hello, everybody. I'm Vincent from Berlin. I'm going to go to the presentation and start. So I thought about what would be valuable from my experience to share here in this community, because I think since I've become independent, I always think about, okay, what is the role that I am hired to do, or what is the task? But then also how do I, as a freelancer, as a independent consultant, whatever the word you want to choose, how can I add some extra value over what is being asked from me when I start a new engagement? There's something that I have developed and recognized the last few years about what it is that I bring to the table. And there's a framework here which is very helpful in understanding our clients and understanding what kind of role you can be in, what is your strength, and how that contributes to the success of your client. And today I want to share some of these concepts, some of these elements that really help making a company efficient, and how you can contribute to that success, and what are some of the tools that you can use and hopefully employ to be even more successful and to make your client also more successful, of course. This is the intention for today. I'm going to start with a bit of a background about me. So I started in 2005 working for Accenture. This was my first job after studying at university. I wanted to go into consulting. I was typically a student. I had done economics, some political science stuff, and then I thought consulting sounds like an interesting field to work in. I specifically wanted to go to a company where I don't just draw some beautiful slides and then they end up in some kind of cupboard. I really wanted to work on something where you make an impact, you build something, you help them along. It's all about implementation. And this is why, in the end, I chose to start with Accenture. And in the end, I stayed there for 15 years, which was way longer than I expected from the beginning. And I'll go into some of the elements there, specifically how I started and how this all comes together from this integrator view and how that contributes to business success. But I want to mention something else. As I'm now since 2020 and I'm independent, I also co-founded some small companies which I left afterwards around some other topics, which was quite interesting. But since the 4 years, I've been working as a consultant and also for 1 year, I guess, full-time employed also as a director at a solar construction company. But I suppose once you're independent, you never leave that kind of mental state. Anyhow, I've been through the classical burnout as well at Accenture, as a lot of people go through. And instead of, let's say, seeing it as a mark of honor, I think it really sucks. I never want to feel that again. It's really terrible. And at the time, I realized I have to really start to figure out how to do things differently and what makes sense for me. And that eventually led me on the path to saying, okay, I'm going to do this by myself, and I want to have more freedom about these kind of things instead of potentially working on tasks that do not really match my talents or my experiences, and also sometimes may not even match what the client needs, and then having the problem of how do you navigate these kind of issues. So my experience in now nearly 20 years, or actually over 20 years, has always been around I would say the engine room, so to speak. So starting with procurement operations, but always with an end-to-end view. Because at Accenture, they learned this lesson early on when you because Accenture came originally from the systems integration, building massive ERP systems, and realizing that if you just take all the old processes and you try to put them into an IT system without changing them, then what you end up with, with these, let's call it bad or obsolete processes, they're just the same bad processes, but very expensive now. So they understood that at some point they have to build on top of the technical skills and how to really build a system. They have to build that bridge to the functions, to the corporate functions like sales, operations, procurement, finance mainly, and really build that bridge between the business and IT and make it fully integrated. There's that word again. And so I started early on, literally on the test team, doing shopping carts, as they used to be called in SAP, where you order something and then it's handed over to some accountant who matches the so to speak, the fake invoice against the purchase order, and then make sure that the system can actually process this kind of stuff automatically. This is my main background, and I will cover a lot of elements around this here. I've done just a huge variety of industries because I've always been functionally oriented, unless the last 2 years at Accenture where I was in public sector because of the utility aspect. But like for 13 years, I was in an area where it's really functionally oriented, which is procurement. But we always looked at, especially, for example, procure to pay efficiency as an end-to-end process. In addition to these experiences, I also published my first book early this year, where I cover more elements around leadership, and you can check that out as well, but this is not the main point here. To start off with, I want to share this concept by a researcher and also consultant called Ishak Adizes. I don't even know if that's the right way to pronounce it. I haven't met the gentleman yet, but this really struck me as a very simple and therefore a very good method to understand where our clients are in their developmental stage of a company and what kind of issues they might be facing and what kind of measures they need to have this resolved. And here I forgot to switch the slide here. Okay, I was on the other screen, apologies. So this is me. I covered most of these points just now. So let's go to the life cycle concept. So this is really about understanding a theory of how a company develops compared to almost like a human life cycle or your personal life cycle, what we go through, and that makes it very tangible because of course we all have an access to these kind of terms, and you can see here on the deliberately the green path of a company that ideally develops towards a so-called prime stage, which means that it's profitable, it's growing, and it's efficient, and it's basically fulfilling what the entrepreneur or the investors or the managers have in mind. This is the whole point. There is a variety of crises, a variety of phases that this company will go through, and a variety of points where the company can fail due to a number of issues. It's all in the book by Adizes. I can highly recommend it. But I want to focus today on this element of the integrator. Then we have, as a company actually progresses out of prime, if certain things are neglected or there's a certain complacency that develops, then the growth will stagnate, the fall will already begin, and it can still be stopped at this area. But the further you go down this slope, the harder it will be to actually revert to a prime state. The more dramatic the steps will have to be taken. So at some point, you'll probably need some restructuring or radical measures to actually resolve some of these issues. Whereas in an area around between prime and the fall, you can still, I would say with enough expertise and the right mandate, you can still bring the company back to prime, or at least you have a higher probability. This is the foundation of this concept. What this gentleman formulated is that there are 4 different roles, or you can even call them dimensions, that are primary when you think about how a company is actually set up and how it develops over time. And these are, we'll go to the next slide. These are the 4 roles with the integrator highlighted here. The first one is the entrepreneur. Second one is the administrator. And then we have the producer and the integrator. Now, to make this tangible, I'll try and explain it according to how a business in the simple way will start. Of course, you need to have an entrepreneur with this idea and to have some kind of successful start to the business. What the entrepreneur needs as a second role to actually drive this growth of this initial phase is the so-called producer, which is, for example, someone who's very excited about the product and says, hey, this is a great idea. I'm going to help you sell this stuff. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to make connections. I'm going to sell, or I'm going to set up production and just implement these kind of things. So this combination is really essential for lots of reasons, but this is not the point here. But this is really essential that these two work together. And then very early on, of course, you also need to have an administrator and probably the best example is, okay, who does the VAT report, all the tax stuff, what are the kind of financial planning and these kind of things. So you need someone who's really into administration and defining how things are done. But then crucially, if you can have these roles and the company will go to a certain stage. But what happens then, and I'll show this in the next diagram, what happens then classically is that you have a vertical integration or vertical optimization. I deliberately have IT here, of course, also as a bar at the bottom. I'll come to that later. But very, very simplified, you have a company where you have C-level and management levels, you have sales, marketing, operations, and finance. Yes, you also have HR somewhere, but this is not, you can include that here, but I wanted to keep it simple. So what happens with these three roles is that they will build these different functions. They will build productions, operation, fulfillment, finance, accounting, controlling, all that beautiful stuff, sales and marketing. But without the integrator, without having this idea, this understanding of that, you also need to have a vertical integration. What happens is that these silos will build up. They will function for a while very well, but then as the company grows, the complexity in each of these functions will increase. This is almost like a natural law. This can be due to just simply more people joining. This could be due to more applications or specialist applications being brought in. And at some point, you will have more and more gaps, more and more alignment issues between these functions when you don't have this understanding how different elements flow through the company and how you make this really, really efficient. This is the key problem, which then stops companies from growing, or this is a key problem when companies have reached a certain stage, everything seems to be great, but then they forget about the integration and they just optimize internally. I've seen it many, many times, and you probably as well. There's a problem in sales. Okay, we're just going to hire this expert. There's a problem in finance. Okay, we're going to hire this expert. We're going to put them in. That's fine, but usually this doesn't solve the problem, because the problem usually lies within the end-to-end view, which is hardly recognized. There's another problem here. Most people in these departments are only incentivized according to their functional dimensions and not to anything going on upstream or downstream of their tasks. So it's another issue here of misaligned interests and incentives. Now, when we jump to or go to the diagram again, this is basically what I mentioned here in terms of the phasing of how this happens. The company has left this kind of really go phase where it's just, sales are going through the roof and there's a lot of stuff being shipped and it's all, going well. So between these areas here to even reach this area, you need to have someone who then comes in and to really make sure, either in a high growth phase, or if the company is already at that stage and then is at danger of going beyond that stage and kind of stagnating, to take charge and to have a mandate across these different elements to work for efficiency and alignment. Here's maybe some challenges. So of course, what does that mean? Like inefficiency, missed deadlines as well, for example. How do you recognize that something's is going on, or how can you also talk with your client, or when you have interviews and you just talk to someone either formally in some of these interviews or at the coffee machine or wherever. If you pick up on these signs, this can be qualitative measures, and I will also come to some quantitative elements here as well that make it recognizable and also possible to talk with any supervisor, any manager, or any C-level person in such a way that they hopefully also understand that some of the stuff that they are struggling with is due to a lack of integration. So inefficiency is here a clear marker. You have this disjointed teams. You have some processes which just break down. There's could be something is just started, and then people ask, okay, whatever happened to this thing? Nobody knows. So and of course that wastes everybody's time. There's a huge opportunity cost, and it's just very frustrating. And it's very frustrating, of course, to not just to the people who are working at it, because what's more frustrating when you do something and then it has no impact, and it's just sort of like for the garbage bin. But it's also very frustrating for any of the leaders and the managers, and then they become frustrated or stressed and can't focused on their on their task around strategy, leadership, and so on. There's of course a lot of stuff around project timelines. So if you hear about delays, and we have of course classical stuff here around systems integration, usually where things are just being delayed, and it's usually a bad a sign of this as well, that something is out of whack here in terms of how the understanding is between these different teams and the different dependencies on how they're working. Then this can be even worse. At some point you notice that people talk about other teams in a bad way. There's friction. There's personal issues coming in between, and so this causes even more problems. And if you don't resolve it, it will just get worse. And this is what I think we as external people really have to articulate as well, because that's our responsibility. Let's go to some more examples of what happens as well, because this will help you to identify what's going on. And I love this little AI generated image here. I've never actually seen it as bad as that, but I hope you haven't. But it encapsulates this quite well. So we have some number of warning signs for you to keep in mind. There's finger pointing culture. This is also a classical problem of missing integration, because a key thing to recognize is, are different tasks and responsibilities, are they assigned to roles, or are they assigned to different people? So if you ask something, okay, who's responsible for this? If people just tell you it's a name of a certain person, usually it's a bad sign already, because usually they could say, you'd have to test this, of course, but the key is usually that you figure out, okay, what is the process, what's the responsibilities, which team is responsible for it, and then you have a clear team lead and a substitute, and then you have an effective way how to manage this communication. So there can be finger pointing. This was way too late, but it's always the fault of the accounting department. They're so slow, or it's the fault of IT or whatever. It doesn't matter. Missed deadlines, and also here there's also quite fascinating. No clear responsibility. It's really difficult for managers and the supervisors and the C-level to really detect, okay, what's actually going on, who's responsible, where is this, what's happening, and without someone from the outside or an integrator taking a look at how all these different things relate, it's almost impossible for them to figure it out. Then they would just go and say, okay, we're just going to add these resources everywhere, and that's not going to work, as I mentioned earlier. So other points here: stalled initiatives, the business doesn't scale, it's just everything is slower. The CEO gets frustrated, maybe he or she wants to bring in new products to the market, and then all the campaigns are delayed, all that kind of stuff. Decision-making bottlenecks, and of course, people just being frustrated, overworked, and that usually translates into attrition, people just leaving, or lots of people being ill and not showing up to work. Now, a bit of getting a bit more specific, being a bit more concrete. So we have some KPIs that you should look out for. So any company, any halfway professional company, of course, should have some kind of key performance targets. This could be in the form of OKRs. This could be in other shapes and sizes. It's just our responsibility to ask questions. Is it how satisfied are you with this? What is the rate here? What is the rate there? I'm going to go and show you a few more other examples, but you can simply, with this kind of topics, go to ChatGPT. You'll find everything, including also professional sources, so that you can actually communicate this as well, when the time is right. Accountability is another big issue. So when there's these internal tools around ticketing systems or service management on the IT side, and certain, you can always ask questions first to understand. Is there actually the right things in place? Are they in place at all? For example, asking questions like, do you have an agreement between different departments or different service functions on a certain amount of tasks? And if there's not even agreement, that's already a huge problem. Most classical example, of course, between IT and the business functions. There in the professional company, you have some kind of service level agreements that if a ticket is opened, it has to be processed within a few hours. There should be some exceptions if there's a major issue, so on and so forth. I'm sure you've seen all these kind of things before. And then last but not least, and I'm going to spend some more time on this, really about the process efficiency metrics. There's a huge variety of them. It's impossible to use all of them, but there's some key ones. And on the top level, let's start with the top. If a company can get in trouble even when it grows, even if there's revenue growth, could be that the margin's decreasing because the operating costs are growing disproportionately. This is a clear sign that integration is missing. Could have a variety of issues. Could be the people, processes, the systems, all kinds of things. But this is a huge area where the company usually needs help, especially in this integration. And then on a lower level, when you talk, for example, on with accounting, finance, you can look at some of the financial indicators around cycle times. How long does it take for the company to collect payments from the customers? How long does it take for the company to pay its suppliers? And a bunch of other elements like this. So these are some of the examples. I'm going to move now to the same image here, just to make it a little more very simple, tangible. So here, as I said, the developmental stage usually starts with the vertical integration, and then you optimize everything and you have the right people on board. And then you really have to focus on the horizontal integration. What that means in these end-to-end processes, I will show after this. But it means, of course, understanding the dependencies between these departments. How do these different elements flow? What systems are going to be used? What are the different approval types, processes? Are they standardized? Are the processes, are they documented? Are they standardized between the departments? Who is responsible for maintaining them? Who's accountable for the KPIs, how they're measured? This is really essential. And if this is missed out, then, well, I mentioned already the problems. Great example of integration is the famous iPod story by Apple. Steve Jobs and Apple, they were successful in bringing together technology and music licenses, even though Sony had both the technology and all the artists under contract already. But Sony was incapable of integrating these two departments because of political infighting, because of a host of other issues. And then they lost out, and Apple made it happen. And to make it very, very specific, it's known from Steve Jobs that whenever he found out that he would have individuals, leaders, managers, department heads, who were not working with the other ones, and who were, maybe out of incompetency or out of ego, let's say it, and they would maybe think about their own jobs first, he would fire them. This is something that he would not tolerate, and I think it speaks volumes for the success of this company. Yes, of course, there's a lot of criticism about leadership style, and I don't need to get into that. That's for someone else to judge, but it's just a great example of how integration really leads to incredible business success on a top level. So let's take a look at some of the tools that you can use. So if you notice, or even if you want to find out if there's a problem here in terms of alignment and integration, this is necessary to know some of these elements, and simply asking for them when you start an engagement or while you're working on something, or maybe you get a new task, will tell you a lot about how integrated this company is and how professional they are in terms of this integration. And first and foremost, I always start with the standard process model. I ask, is there one? Where is it? Who's maintaining it? How is it stored? Is it up to date? These kind of things. And there's a variety of ways to do it. It's both an art and a science. But when it comes to documentation of building it, you can go to the BPMN logic. Usually in manufacturing businesses, this is all standard. This is clear. When it comes to services and I would say startups, e-commerce, and other companies which maybe have some kind of a less traditional approach, or from for other reasons, they might not be as professional, so they might not know about these kind of elements, and that's very important to bring in. This is related to the famous RACI matrices, responsibility, accountability, who needs to be consulted or informed about certain events along certain processes, and there has to be a match between the processes, like swim lane diagrams, and the different roles, the responsibilities, of course, as well, and everything has to be documented and has to be integrated. And then also some of these elements have to be defined in terms of the KPIs. If you have a certain end-to-end process or a certain process step. When you go into more detail, you need to figure out, okay, how long does this task usually take? There's a variety of ways to ask these employees at the client, but what I always do is I work with companies, let's say up to maybe a couple of €100 million revenue from startup or fast growing companies to maybe that kind of maturity level. And there, you need to ask these questions and figure out, is this actually being measured at all? Yeah, that's another sign of missing alignment, missing integration. The cross-functional governance means that you can resolve a lot of issues when you bring these different departments together and you just simply draw an end-to-end process and just go along the end-to-end process and talk about the requirements of each and every department or each and every function here. As an example, I had a situation where I was at a client where it was being discussed and developed to set up a new IT infrastructure in terms of IT systems, mostly related to a new ERP system with a whole bunch of integration, both with sales and all kinds of other elements. And these people had been really thorough and very capable IT guys, and it was really, really good. However, there was one key thing missing, and this was the process view. Everything else was there, but there seemed to have been this idea that if you just dumped everything into this data lake, then the different function can just take out what they need. Of course, this doesn't work at all. This view, and you will never get to a stage that you can actually set up a proper working ERP system with this kind of approach. You need to take an end-to-end process, and you need to put everyone together in the same room, and then maybe at some stage you can go into separate teams. But at that level, you really need to have that shared understanding. This is exactly what we did at the time. We started with order to cash, and in the first 3-hour session, we only even captured the requirements on a high level for the first step when the customer clicks buy on the online form, and then just to explain and to build that understanding among all the different players, what actually happens in that moment and what needs to happen between the tax people and accounting and production planning and so forth. So this is really important to do. I think that a lot of my experience is that people want to think it's easier to simply request requirements from other departments, and from my experience, it's not a good idea. It's really. And you probably all know this, and you've seen this before. That's I strongly assume that this is really essential to bring people together. And of course, also look for proper project management, not just systems, but in the sense system also in terms of skills as well. Do people know how to set up a simple project management plan or a project plan in terms of the required roles, the required sequences, the required skills of the different roles, and something is better than nothing, but this is also something where you can identify where there's really something to improve and to and of course for your tasks as well, right? I mean, any client wants to understand, okay, what is it actually that we're working on? What is the outcome? How and how are we progressing? Because every day that you're spending with the client costs some money as well, of course, as well. So you want to be absolutely clear about where you are progressing in your task. And a lot of people can learn something from that as well. So here's that image, that diagram one more time with, I would say, a better view of what it actually should look like. And I deliberately extended the IT area here behind the entire company as sort of an integration layer. And I think this is quite clear that this is the primary or one essential role, I would say, of IT for any company. But it depends on really a proper integration between the different business functions and this understanding of the business processes. And the two key ones I mentioned here, I put here on the slide, is the order to cash process. So anything from order entry by a customer to the order fulfillment and the invoicing. So it really goes from sales through operations, through finance, and there's a bunch of things that can go wrong along this process, a bunch of things where sometimes companies start and then they have a gap in the systems. And yes, usually it's not that easy also, because you have specialized tools and systems for each of these areas. But whenever the clients make these decisions, they have to be very conscious about how to properly integrate this, and not just have someone in sales say, well, okay, we're not happy with this sales tool anymore, we're just going to use this one, the new one, without consulting with operations and finance as well before they're actually implementing it. And this can be, for them, of course, can be kind of frustrating, because they want to go and they want to start and they want to do this, but there's no other way. They have to understand, and I mean, ideally they have people who are aware about these effects, but if they don't, then, well, it's our role as consultants to point this out and to point out the risks if this is missed out. So so we have order to cash, and we have here procure to pay from recording material requirements. I've worked in solar construction, so this was selling a solar system through the website, and then having craftspeople go to the client and assemble everything, and then you have a bunch of of course a supply chain fulfillment process in between. So you have planning, and then you have procurement and logistics process here. Yeah, and at the end of the day, you have to pay the suppliers for both the material or some additional services. You have to, of course, pay the fulfillment if it's like a 3PL logistics company. Depending on the contract, of course, they have to be paid, and everything has to be integrated and understood in the way that you can then make sure that the company actually understands which of these costs actually are cost deliberately dedicated to one project, and which of the other ones in accounting belong to sales, general and administrative, so that they can do a proper margin accounting, proper business performance accounting. So these are some of these examples. Let's go further. This is another example of a process model. So usually before you start drawing one process, you need to understand what is actually a suitable process model on the top level for the company. And you can use the value chain for the company for that. You can take a look at other examples. Very simple. There's another diagram called SIPOC, which is sometimes used. There's a variety of things that you could try. And then underneath the top level, it's important to understand that you have different levels, which go commonly to a fourth level, which is an actual swim lane diagram. And then the level 5 can be something like a work instruction. So depending on the size of the company and how complex it is, this is how it works. And then, of course, you need to figure out at what stage do I define something for the company, with who do I do that, and when do I hand it over to other teams, other people who are responsible, which standards do they follow, so on and so forth. Yeah, so this can look like this. It can look different. It depends on the value chain of the company. Here's an example of procure to pay this would be level 2 approximately, similar to the other one, or maybe even level 3, depending on the size of the company. I just put these green boxes around it just to illustrate that everything here is usually covered by what's called operations. So this is procurement here. Then you can have fulfillment, supply chain, logistics involved here, commonly under the umbrella of operations. And then these elements here are finance, accounting, and the key here to efficiency and having really also, I would say, a big lever of value for the CFO is if you can help integrating this better. And I mean, let's be honest here. If a company is able to match purchase orders and invoices more efficiently and make sure that the suppliers get paid, I mean, this is also a topic here for independent people, because we're, at the end of the day, we're also suppliers in a way here. So this is a key element, key process, which is very often neglected. There's a lot of procurement, buying stuff going on in the company, and there's a lot of value to be gained here when you have an understanding about this process. Here I copied some stuff around benchmarks. So depending on the area of your expertise where you're working, there can be a variety of different benchmarks and ways to calculate. This is very useful, of course, to make it tangible. If you have to ask, is there, do these actually exist? Where are they? And then can you compare it? And with all this AI stuff now, I think for us, external independent consultants, this is incredible. How this kind of accelerates the value that we can bring, because everything is there. Of course, we need to check some of this information. Sometimes there's some weird definitions here, or some information that doesn't make that much sense. But generally, you can find a lot of stuff, and you can find not just the way that's calculated, but also some benchmarks. And if you ask ChatGPT for the sources, you can go to the original source as well, in case you want to be 100% sure that you're not using some kind of aggregate stuff and it doesn't make sense. So this is an inspiration for talking fundamentally. And let's go to the integrator role and how that translates to what your role could be, or maybe something to expand your understanding of your role and bring even more value to the table. So it's really about in this prime state where the company is doing well but wants to transform and wants to build something. This is really, really great or essential to maintain efficiency here while things are changing. It's important that innovation can be still delivered in this process, because if too much time is spent on old processes, or you don't have these interactions which are efficient, then it's very difficult for a company to innovate and to bring it to market. And of course, it all relates to the profitability and the margins of the business. If they get into problems and they have the instinct of just putting more resources, it's probably, as I mentioned, not going to solve the problem. It's just going to shrink the margins even further. What can you do in this understanding, in addition to what you might be doing anyway? Maybe you're already doing this, I assume so, but here's a few steps. So, first of all, it's all about identifying some conflicts. You can do this in the interviews. You'll probably see so many things, and depending, of course, on how you're confident, working with these people, and also if it's if it fits within their let's say the ability to focus on these things. But at least writing down some stuff, and when the time is right, at least submitting these ideas. These observations is also always useful. And if you are in that position to be asked to support here, then I would always start with what are the processes, what are the end-to-end processes, what is happening upstream, downstream, what are the different systems and roles involved, and how can they be improved. The next level is KPIs and accountability. You're making people accountable for these end-to-end performance KPIs, defining them properly, measuring them properly. And of course, all of this requires very good communication, and which is relatively simple, I would say, because most of the time, from my experience, is that when you talk to the people actually doing most of the work, doing most of the work sounds maybe a bit unfair. Let's say doing the operational activities and not and less leadership, management, and strategic work. So the procurement professionals, supply chain, fulfillment, warehousing, accountants, tax accountants, all these people, talk to them, and you'll find out probably a lot of different things that can be improved, and where you can help. And then last but not least, installing a monitoring system, and also this awareness that none of the stuff is for eternity, but it needs to be monitored. It needs to also be questioned whether at some point something needs to be decommissioned. Maybe it doesn't make sense anymore, and then also build in this this sustainable I would say system around it. Say, okay, someone needs to in leadership have an eye on this and be accountable also for this, and then have some periodical reviews of what makes sense. Some gaps I mentioned already. Departmental silos. Look for teams working in isolation. This is a sign. Recurring conflicts. You can pick this up from interviews I mentioned already. And delays. This is some bit of repetition here from earlier on. And to bring it back up to, I would say, to bring it all together, and some, I would say, call to action here, or to summarize it. This integrator really has two major advantages as opposed to entrepreneur, performer, and administrator. It's really the cross-functional perspective. This is really key. It of course means that maybe the integrator can never be expert in one topic. Maybe he or she can. I've done a lot of procurement stuff, so I'm very comfortable in that field. On the other things, I have an understanding, but the key is here not to be an expert in everything, but to really focus on this end-to-end integration, and then seek the help and integrate the experts from these different divisions or these departments and dimensions into this approach, and then have them talk to each other, and you meditating or facilitating between them, mediating, that you can really figure out, okay, where are the biggest integration blocks. And we as external independent consultants, we can do this a bit easier, even because we have this outside-in perspective. And I can just highly recommend to share your observations. And if you call them like that, the observations, then they cannot be wrong, because that's what you observe, and you have the trust of your client. And I think they appreciate this kind of outside-in view. And to summarize this, the importance again, the integrator can connect compartments, can ensure accountability. This is really key. This is often forgotten, that you have to not just connect them, but then also make someone accountable for the connection and the integration and the efficiency. And this means balancing what company actually wants to go, and how the rest of the company, let's say, operations, have to transform and have to get in alignment with this vision. So Integrator, I can recommend to check out that book. Yeah, it's really a central role. There's a lot of other examples where companies have failed or stagnated, where a lot of these things have been missing. Alignment is key. You need to have this effort. You have to have an understanding and a mandate and the right tools to do this. And it's really an opportunity for everyone here to add value in that kind of perspective. And what can I say? I hope you found this interesting. We have a few more minutes for any questions or examples. Also, if you want to share something where this resonates, then go for it. We have a few more minutes. And afterwards, also, I invite you all to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's, I think, a given. But now we have time for questions. So, Rebecca, if you want to take over.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vincent. I'm just going to see Cornelia wrote something as well. Thank you, Vincent, for bringing challenges and solutions to the table. I would like to reiterate the role of communication. It's about channels, and more importantly, it's about empowering people to interact and communicate in a valuable way. Wonderful.
That is absolutely true. I've noticed this. That's a great point. And I think maybe what I can add in this context, and that's actually also already the key. I think there's two things, and this is I think essential when performance of people drops, or they become frustrated, or they can actually not perform as they would like and as the company maybe expects them to. It's, do they have the right context? Do they really understand why they are doing certain things? And this is really important to figure this out, and it's really an essential responsibility of managers, supervisors to provide this context. Of course, these people also need to know that if they don't know it, they need to be able to ask these questions so that they can get that maximum level of context. And then the other element is what is commonly called situational awareness. So what is actually currently going on? What are the other processes? What are maybe the other projects going on? Is there anything in the present that's also impacting their work? So these are the two dimensions that are essential. Thanks for that statement. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. So we'll just give a few more seconds or minutes if you want to type your questions into the chat. I put Vincent's LinkedIn in there if anybody wants to connect with him there. Maybe one question that we get often is, will you share the slides? So can I share them in a follow-up email for those who are maybe watching the recording or those?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can. Let me check one more time. I've me on the other.
I can also just send them in a follow-up email, which we can chat.
I'm just going through it. That's fine. Perfect. Yeah, because the diagram, I took this one, but the company name is on it, so not violating any copyright here. And I have some stuff in the appendix as well. Yeah. We can. Yeah, you can share it.
Thank you. I see someone else is typing. maybe in the meantime, is there a question that you get asked the most, or
I have maybe I'm going to share a viewpoint that maybe people have noticed this as well. I think there's a lot of because technology plays such a huge role, and we have so many incredible developments around AI and so forth. There's one personal thing that I noticed over the last years where I think things have become a bit out of balance, and I wonder if people here have made the same observation. And this relates to the way that applications and systems are maintained or even implemented. And we used to have this way of working, which is called waterfall. You describe everything way to the bottom, and then you bring it back up, and it takes a long time. And then maybe you have a system, but it might also already be obsolete. And then we have this other method, which is more agile and product management, which is a great addition. It came from the ability to do like websites and apps and very, very fast developmental cycles, which is great. I've noticed something, and I don't know if people have noticed as well, that in some companies, this approach is now also being used for business process systems like ERP or related systems. I have a very strong opinion on that, but maybe people want to share something around this. And if not, I'm happy to share my opinion.
I'll leave the floor open for you. Ivo asks, are there any hints how to identify gaps?
Depending on, I would first of all just listen closely when you talk to people, and it usually takes some time. You need to build some trust, and but some of the questions that you can ask, which are always neutral, is like, okay, so explain to me, how does this work? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And where's this stuff coming from? That's basically the input into your work. And then as they're explaining, this is the one element you can already ask. Okay, so what do you need to do? And if there's already something where, or you can ask, is there any additional, let's say, data cleansing or corrections that you need to perform? Anything that relates to an issue which might happen, upstream. This can be a sign, or you can ask about the way of working with whatever happens after they're done. It works like downstream. And whenever you are being told about something very general, you can say something negative, where you can feel person might be a bit frustrated. I would see if I can dig a little deeper, and usually my experience is that people are quite happy to share these things, because I think a lot of people think, or a lot of, it's a common belief that people just want to work and get paid. But I think it's not the truth. I think people really want to be useful, and they want to, bring their company, make it a little bit better and make it, function well. And so asking for these improvement ideas is always, I would even say it's your responsibility to do it. And then most people will freely share some of these ideas, because most people are very loyal to their companies, and they have an interest in the company functioning better and them working better. So this is how I would do it. This is more the qualitative way, and then as you progress, and you can find a lot of suggestions also with regards to these end-to-end processes. Yeah, look for some of these figures. Look for some of these performance numbers. Can you compare it over time? Is it going faster, slower? And dig into that and ask people what they think is going on. And this makes it on the quantitative side easier to maybe drill down and identify some of these issues.
Thank you. So we have about 5 minutes left. I will just also read what Ivo also wrote. I really can understand the topic, but I have no idea how I would get the, in quotations, arms around as a single freelancer.
Yeah, I mentioned a lot of big topics, I would say, around end-to-end processes and these big areas, but I wanted to set the context how, when you take all of this together, it can really make or break a company. As a single freelancer, if you are working on a specific topic, and you want to, you just have an idea or you have a wish to bring some more value to the table, then this is an opportunity to look at some of these elements where you're given something or you're processing something, you're handing it over somewhere. If there's problems in what you receive or the feedback that you get from maybe the people who then continue to work, then you can invest some time, if you have the time or if you want to do that, in talking both to the upstream people, talking to the downstream people and saying, okay, I've been doing this, I've been seeing this pattern, that something hasn't been working properly. And then you can figure out, is there an opportunity to actually improve something which goes beyond that particular task or that particular role that you're doing. And when you identify this, if I were the client, I would be extremely excited for this, because then it would definitely be beyond the expectations that I have from you.
Really great, thank you. Then just wait a few more seconds to see if anything else comes up. But you will get a follow-up email with the slides here. I also dropped Vincent's LinkedIn into the chat if you scroll up a little bit. And here you'll find it again in case you have any follow-up questions or anything like that. Then on behalf of Malt and myself as well, thank you so much, Vincent, for spending your evening with us and sharing all of your learnings, experience, and valuable insight.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for everyone who joined, and thanks for the questions as well.
You're very welcome. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, or day, wherever you are, and we will see you soon.